Good afternoon. This is Chaplain Fritz Harms. I continue to read stories for those of us here at Bethany Home who live here as residents, for you especially. And if there's anybody else watching and listening to these stories, you are warmly welcomed as well. But I'm reading for our Bethany Home residents in particular these stories from the book It's All Grace, the Best of Eppinga. And these stories were written originally by this person, a minister in the gospel of the gospel, namely Jacob D. Eppinga. He was a minister in the Christian Reformed Church, and most, I think, of his years of church ministry were in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Today's first story is called A Little White Ball. I have just come home from playing some golf. I used to think that the game was a waste of time. I had better things to do. Imagine grown men and women chasing after a little white ball. Today, however, you can count me among their number. Golf gets me out into the wide open spaces. It is grand therapy for one such as myself who has spent so much of his life within the narrow confines of a pastor's study. And notice, by the way, that he says a pastor's study. That's the right way of putting things. It's not so much that the pastor has an office, but it stands in good tradition to say that he occupies a study, because that's what takes place in a pastor's office. He studies, he counsels, he comforts, but perhaps the majority of his time is spent by himself, praying over, struggling, wrestling with Holy Scripture and its meaning and application for God's people today. Eppinga continues, aren't trees beautiful? And rolling grassy hills, the sky so big overhead holds wandering clouds of various shapes and hues. And then there are the birds, chipmunks, rabbits. Not long ago, 3 deer crossed my path, making incredible leaps over a wide waterhole. It was early in the morning. I would have missed the sight if I had stayed in bed. I don't play the game very well, says Eppinga. My partner's ball usually goes straight. I use a different system, tacking. Like a sailor, my ball goes left, then right, then left again, and so on, until it reaches its destination. The words of Isaiah often come to mind, something about making the crooked straight. I used to think that baseball was the only game with myriads of application to life. However, I find now much in the pursuit of that little white ball that brings spiritual lessons to mind also. For example, I'm reminded how easy it is to cheat. I played with someone last year who jubilantly discovered his lost ball only inches from the cup. But how could that be when I had his ball in my pocket? Speaking of lost balls, I usually have little patience looking for them and easily abandon my quest. But as often as I give up, I think of the great shepherd, who never stops searching until he has found the one sheep that was lost. Wandering from right to left, never staying on target, I seem to walk the broad way and not the narrow way of the fair way. Few there be who find it. I'm often reminded of the saying, golf is a game that keeps you humble. After all, golf spelled backwards is flog. There is a tree where I play my weekly game. Sometimes my ball hits it and I apologize. Some years ago, playing my first game of the season, I talked to it. I said I was glad I was not a tree. I said I'd been here and there the past winter, even to Florida, and all that while the tree had not moved an inch. It must be boring, I said to it, to be a tree. Afterward, as I reflected on Psalm 1, I thought there is something to be said for being a tree, especially when the opposite is to be blown about by every wind of doctrine. My friend H.B. Weiland recently passed away in the Netherlands. He was an eminent theologian, scholar, churchman, who represented his church at our synods on a number of occasions. In his later years, he too discovered golf, though his small country is hardly large enough to hold golf courses. He was heartsick when someone stole his clubs. I'm glad that in his lifetime of dedicated service, the Lord allowed him to find the pleasures of chasing a little white ball. Thank you.